What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I dropped 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You are watching 40 Days and Counting. Not 40 Days away. That's 40 Days and Counting. Where I do 2 shows per week, 2 live streams per week. One on Tuesday at 6 p.m., one on Fridays at 8 a.m. And this is going to be a great show because we come into today's show with breaking news, which is very exciting. So we'll get to that breaking news in a second, both from the basketball world. You're talking about the NBA and college basketball at the same time, coming with major reforms that will have lasting impact on both college basketball and the NBA. So we're going to get right to that in just a second. We also got plenty of other stuff to get to. We have a massive NBA playoff slate coming up tonight, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about a number 1 seed on the brink of elimination. And you know they ain't the Thunder because the Thunder are already advanced into the next round. The Detroit Pistons in major trouble in their series with the Orlando Magic. We'll break down what's going on there. We'll also talk some football. The Jets had a visit from a very interesting name. A name that I did not expect to be part of the Jets' plans for 2026. But it turns out Russell Wilson could be remaining in the New York area playing for the New York Football Jets, not the Giants this year. So we'll have plenty on that. We also got some big Major League Baseball firings to get to. This is going to be a fun show. 40 Days and Counting with your boy EJ Stewart, streaming live in multiple spots, including live on YouTube. Shout out to the folks on YouTube. Love you guys as always. That is being streamed live on New Generation Media. If you're there, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you get into the chat and engage with the show. If you can, that'd be greatly appreciated. Like, comment, all those different things, and of course subscribe to the channel. All that stuff helps. Also streaming live on X. EJ_Stu is where we are live on X. So if you're on X, again, like the video, get in the comment section, engage with the show. Let me know what you think about some of this breaking news happening, some of the stuff happening with the NBA playoffs and the NFL and Major League Baseball. Get in on the comment section. Again, X is where I'm at, EJ_Stewart. And we got the full trifecta today. Last week, I know we went 0-4 getting the trifecta ready to go, but Instagram Live, we are streaming live on IG. So shout out to the folks that are watching me live on IG. Greatly appreciate you guys as well. So if you're watching on IG Live, again, Action EJ is where you'll find me if you're looking for me on Instagram. And again, we got a lot to get to on this show because some big stuff happening in the world of basketball that has nothing to do right now with the current NBA playoffs. So let's get right to it, man. 40 Days and Counting. Of course, if you want to watch this show, you know the avenues. If you want to listen to this show because maybe you're in a situation where you're like, oh, well, watching live was not possible for me or I had to leave and then now I'm on the run. All good. All episodes get podcasted to our podcast channel. Wherever you get your audio podcast, just search New Generation Podcast Network. You can get all episodes of 40 Days and Counting and all the other content we do for New Generation Media. All right, so let's get into the swing of things because there's some pretty big news happening, and I was actually ready to go right at 6, and then I saw stuff happening, so I had to kind of change up a little bit of the order of the show, but that's okay. But we're going to begin in college basketball because this just came across, and this was quite not surprising, but news that we had been kind of, in my opinion, at least dreading, and now it is indeed happening. So according to Pete Thamel, we have a tournament expansion coming to March Madness. So the NCAA tournament, which is, the thing that we all love for both now the men and the women, both are great revenue drivers, both bring great TV ratings and fan interest, whether you're following college basketball from the beginning of November all the way until March, or if you're just parachuting in like a lot of folks are during March Madness. Either way, everyone remains really invested in the tournament, and we saw how well the ratings for this year's tournament did for the first 2 weekends and the Final Four for the men's. We've seen what the women's tournament has done in past years, especially when Clayton Clark was a part of it. So it's an extremely popular event. It is now undergoing a major change. So this is a tournament that was originally Well, originally it was like 16 teams, but for a while it was 64. Then they expanded by 4 teams to go to 68. We've been at 68 for a while now. According to Pete Thamel, now it is all but a formality that the NCAA tournament for the men's and women's basketball will be moving now to 76 teams. This is a report coming down right before we started our show. I'm just going to read just a little bit of this report here. And actually, if I can share my screen, that would maybe be helpful for you guys so you guys can see what I'm seeing. Let's see if that will work. I know this is always I don't want you to see all that. I want you just to see, okay, wait, hold on. Let's see. There we go. Google Chrome. That's what I want. There you go. Okay, so the NCAA has initiated the final steps to expand the men's and women's tournaments. A source tell ESPN the expansion has been discussed for well over a year, is on track to be formalized in the coming weeks, and would begin this coming season. Sources indicate mid-May as a potential timeline for an announcement. Again, while there are a few steps that have to take place in terms of approvals, via various NCAA committees, source says that those are just quote-unquote formalities. So the NCAA officials met with media partners for the men's tournament last week. Sources told ESPN the sides are in final step of the media contracts per sources, but they have not been signed. The NCAA will also need approval once the contracts are done from various committees that include the men's and women's basketball committees, the men's and women's oversight committees, and there you go. The one aspect of this that I think is going to be important is this right here. The added finances will cover the logistics costs for both the men's and women's tournaments. The additional units will come into play and still deliver a modest financial upside. And this is the main part here that I think is going to be the conversation that we're going to have and a lot of folks are going to have in the coming days. The driver of this move hasn't been money, but rather access. The expansion has been driven by power conferences, which have grown throughout the course of the current deal. The mechanics of the expansion in the men's tournament will include 8 additional at-large bids. What's known now as the first 4 is now going to be 8 teams, is currently 8 teams playing 4 games in Dayton and Ohio, will expand to 12 games being played by 24 teams at 2 different sites, one of which is expected to remain in Dayton. That is the crux of this deal. So the claim right now is, and shout out to Pete Thamel, obviously excellent reporting as he always does. The claim coming from the people in power is, well, this is not a money grab. Nope, don't accuse us of that. We're not doing that. This is no money grab here. This is purely about access. That's what they're going to say. That's what they're saying right now, that this is about access to the NCAA tournament, because these conferences like the SEC, like the Big Ten, like the ACC, they've become so bloated that in previous years where these teams would have been kind of spread out in various different conferences, right? There was a Pac-12 that would garner a few of these, bids. A conference like Conference USA, for example, way back in the day would get you, 3 or 4 bids. Back in the day, the Atlantic 10 maybe would get you 3 or 4 bids, right? There are teams in these conferences that typically, if we had the old structure of college basketball, probably would have found a way into the tournament. At least that's their argument. Would have found their way into the tournament if they weren't all slotted in one super league where they end up kind of all fitting into the middle of the pack. That's a nice story, and in many ways there may be some truth to that, but it is utter BS. Don't give me that this is about access. It is about money, because at the end of the day, for those schools and these conferences to really cash in on the money that's been spent for these teams to field rosters, and now we're talking about NIL, and now we're talking about revenue sharing. For them to cash out the way they want to, they have to make the NCAA tournament. That's how they get the return on their investment. And what was happening which is why you saw the Auburns, who were basically a 500 team, crashing out. You saw some of these mediocre teams, some of these big leagues saying, "Oh, how can we get an opportunity even though we're 1 game above 500 or 2 games above 500?" Crashing out. They're crashing out because they probably spent $5 million on a roster that got them zilch, nothing, nada, zero, and that's why they're saying, well, quote-unquote access is the issue. But the reality is the access, the problem with not having the access is you're not getting the revenue from the tournament. That is what it comes down to. So to me, they're going to push this access thing, but that's hogwash. That's nonsense. That's nothing to do. I mean, it has something to do with the situation, but it's a neater package than simply saying if we're gonna spend the money we want to spend on basketball, we should be able to reap the benefits of the exposure and the money that comes with getting into the tournament. Which I'm sorry, it just shouldn't. I don't think that you're guaranteed that. You weren't guaranteed that when the field was more leveled. It shouldn't be guaranteed now. So I don't buy that argument at all. A lot of those conferences that have now either went away or again have become mid-major conferences, they don't get a lot of teams. So it's not like these teams are being boxed out in any way. These are programs that probably would not have made the tournament anyway. But this is the game. This is the gambit that they're giving you. And now we're going to 76 teams. I will say this, and I've been someone, as you can see, I'm anti field expansion. I think it is unnecessary. I think we're going to end up seeing a lot of mediocre teams that we don't really care about playing, which is going to actually bring about kind of terrible basketball. Like, we've watched these first 4 games for I don't know however many years. Even the games that are entertaining, like, they're not great teams. So even the games that have been quote-unquote entertaining haven't necessarily been fun or great to watch. It is not. The first 4 has been fine. You know, like, it's been a fine addition. Have we needed it? Absolutely not. It certainly is better than what we had before with it was just the play-in teams playing. Nobody cared about that. But, you know, with the bubble teams, quote-unquote, or the Final 4 that got in, them being able to be a part of the tournament in terms of the at-larges and playing in this, you know, mini tournament in Dayton, it's been fine. I don't think it's turned the tournament upside down in any way. We have seen some of those teams go on some nice runs, but very few of them none of them won a championship, obviously. But I don't know. I just, again, I don't think that has been this great move by the tournament, by the NCAA. I will say that I think that this will probably add more juice to that Tuesday and Wednesday they have these games, because now you're talking about March Madness legitimately being like a full week, like that first week. Like I always say, and we've been saying this for years, like, you know, I know the tournament technically starts on Tuesdays. I think most people don't like acknowledge that. Like, they'll watch those games, or maybe they won't. Like, they may be still locked into the start of the Major League, well, baseball. Yeah, baseball won't be. But they might still be watching the NBA or watching whatever. It's really that Thursday is the day where you got to take off work and take off school if you're trying to do that kind of thing, and you get locked in. People aren't locked into that Tuesday. This Tuesday and Wednesday thing now, it becomes more of a thing. If you're going to be playing 12 games, and 2014 is going to be playing in 2 days, then that's a full slate of games. So it'll probably add a little more juice. You know, you got alumni from all these different big schools that now be a part of this thing. So, you know, from that standpoint, from a TV standpoint, it'll probably do okay. But I still think from a competition standpoint, this sucks. Again, what we're now going to be getting is we're going to be rewarding mediocrity. We claim to be a society that is trying to become anti-participation trophy, and right now, because some millionaires and billionaire institutions are you know, crying poor because they couldn't win more than, you know, 8 games in their conference, they're saying that we should still have an opportunity in the NCAA tournament when those teams have no shot to win a national title. None. No shot to win a national title. No shot to get to the Final 4. It's silly to put them in this situation. So, but that's where we're at. When you got enough power conferences on board, you got enough powerful administrators on board that are going to say, hey, listen, again, we're going to put this investment in basketball. We got to have some kind of return. This is the kind of thing you get. I think if you're a college basketball fan, as much as I think this is kind of lame, this is probably better than the other worse alternatives that we were hearing about. They always talk about expanding this thing to 92 teams, 96 teams. Like, that was real conversations that were happening, and that would have really sucked. 76 is terrible. It's terrible. I don't think it's great. I think it kind of waters down the college basketball season now. In theory, yeah, you're playing college basketball season. You don't want to have to play in this first early, you know, additional game, but I think overall, if you're playing through the college basketball season, you're no longer fighting tooth and nail to try to get those last few spots. Big wins during the regular season for some of those bubble teams won't mean nearly as much, and you just water down the college basketball season, and it sucks because I think this past year we just saw it was one of, I think, the most exciting college basketball regular seasons we've had in a long time, because we had so many great star players and so many really good teams that I think a lot of fans got more invested in this college basketball regular season than we've had in previous years because of the NBA draft talent that was here. if there's more draft talent, in theory, fans will still be invested. But the interest in the night-to-night results dissipates every time you decide to expand this tournament. So I'm not a fan of this. There's no reason for this to have happened. But when you get a lot of narratives that are being perpetuated by people who simply want to, again, get a little bit of green and get some return on their investment, these are the kind of moves that happen. So 76 teams is the move for the NCAA, according to ESPN's Pete Thamel. We'll continue to pay closer attention to that. Let me know in the chat how you feel. You're excited about the NCAA tournament field expanding to 76 teams. Let me know. I am certainly not excited at all about this change. But that's not the only breaking news we had coming up on this show as we were getting started. Also breaking right now, NBA is reportedly finalizing NBA lottery reform for the draft. So this is now another basketball story, but now we're talking about the pros here. And it was actually fascinating when I saw this come across. I almost was kind of like, maybe I don't got to do this. But because they have been talk for a couple of days about like what the league was planning. Apparently, everyone hated the idea that they were talking about. Shams Charania now, just before 6 o'clock, came out with the NBA disclosing to his 30 general managers a new anti-tanking reform that they are pushing, that it will likely be the program that gets put in place for next season. So again, I'm going to share my screen so you can see a little bit of what we'll be talking about here for next year. So the NBA has disclosed his 30 general managers a new anti-tanking draft reform termed the 3-2-1 lottery that includes expanding the lottery to 16 teams, flattening odds, and a relegation zone where the bottom 3 teams will be penalized with fewer lottery balls for the number 1 pick. Starting with the 2027 draft, sources told ESPN on Tuesday. The league has held multiple critical meetings with its board of governors, competition committee, and 30 general managers over the last few weeks to narrow down towards this singular proposal ahead of the owners' vote on May 28th. There could be minor modifications to the proposal, but the key points of the framework have a majority of the support from teams, according to sources. The 3-2-1 lottery proposal, named to represent the number of lottery balls per team, would expand the lottery from 14 teams to 16 teams. The teams that do not qualify for the playoffs or the play-in but stay out of the relegation zone, that's going to be spots 4 through 10, would receive 3 lottery balls each. Teams with the bottom 3 record, the relegation area, would receive just 2 lottery balls, but would have a floor of the 12th pick, while the rest of the 13 lottery teams could fall as far as 16. The 9th and 10th play-in seeds each receive 2 lottery balls each, while the losers of the 7-8 play-in game receive 1 lottery ball each. In addition, no team will be able to win the top pick in consecutive years or be able to win the top 3 consecutive top 5 picks. Teams also would not be able to protect picks 12 through 15 slots going forward. So this is the new proposal that the NBA is talking about. Again, this is this is brand new, so I'm reacting to this live. Again, this is not the proposal that was being spoken about a couple of days ago. That sounded terrible. It was going to be a proposal. I'm trying to remember what it was, but essentially it was going to be a proposal where if it was like basically now the spot for where the tank spot, so to speak, was like basically shifted. Instead of being top 4, it was like, okay, the teams that are the bottom 10, they would have one set of odds, and the rest of the odds would be. And I'm like, well, now you're just saying, okay, as long as I'm bottom 10, I'm good. It's still giving teams an opportunity to get to a certain strike zone without any kind of penalty if you're really, really terrible and you're just completely throwing games. This is, I think, okay. This is a lot better than what we were hearing earlier in the week about what they were planning to do. I think they did an important step, which was to eliminate the incentive to be absolutely the worst. And it's been a debated thing across basketball minds, and I respect kind of everybody's perspective on it. I don't respect the people who say that they should just go to the worst record. That is stupid. People say, "Oh, it works for the NFL." I'm like, the NFL is 17 games. You can't quantify what works for the NFL, where for that sport maybe teams are only taking the last 2 games, and an NBA with an 82-game season, and teams know exactly where they have to get to be the worst. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't respect those people. anyone else that's had an idea of how to fix the lottery, I respected them all because I think that there are no real bad ideas. I will say I think that this idea hits something that I think that was important, which was to, again, not allow there to be any kind of advantage to being the worst. And I know some people have argued, well, what happens if you're just really, really bad? My argument has been, I don't know if we don't really know who the bad teams are. That's my argument, is we don't actually know who the worst teams are because teams are artificially making their teams awful. They're artificially saying, hey, this is not a team, like there are a few teams like the Kings, they weren't trying to be bad, they just sucked. There are a couple teams where, yeah, they weren't trying to be bad, they just sucked. But a lot of these teams, they came into the season, like the Nets, like the Wizards, like the Pacers, because they lost Tyrese Halliburton. They came into this year artificially ensuring that they were going to have a certain terrible record because of the rosters that they put together and the lineups they threw out there and how they coached their games. That had to be penalized. You couldn't be in a situation where you positioning yourself in that way was somehow going to improve your odds. That couldn't work. I think, does it solve it completely? No. But I think making it so that those bottom 3 spots, you're no longer going to be in a situation where those teams are going to just be laying down every single night. You got no choice. You got to try to win some of these games because you don't want to be in a less advantageous situation to figure out your lottery odds. I think the difference between the worst team in the NBA and the 4th worst team in the NBA is just not that much. I think the difference between the worst team and the 6th worst team is not that much. Like, it's not that much a difference. And again, if it means that these squads end up saying, okay, we're going to have to sign that veteran or maybe play that guy or play that veteran or make a coaching change because the coach is incapable of winning. Like, if it means they're going to make the kind of necessary adjustments to get themselves out of that positioning, then I think this kind of ends up fixing itself for the most part when it comes to that bottom 3. I like that there's a relegation zone. You shouldn't be rewarded for being terrible. There are other bad teams in the NBA, and like I've said for so many years, it's like their false parity is just that. Or rather, the idea of parity is false. We don't have real parity in the NBA. And the problem, which I remain, is the issue, and why I would be way more radical with this than most. The problem remains, there's no way to get out of the middle. That's the biggest problem with the NBA and why people go to tanking. They go to tanking because they say, if we're stuck in the middle, where we're kind of just like competing for a playoff spot, or maybe we get into the play-in, but we don't have like a franchise-changing player or a star that's developing into a guy who can take us to the promised land, then in the long term, if the goal is to eventually win a championship, then what are we really doing? Like, we're just kind of, we're competing, people are coming to the arena because they're invested, people are watching the games on TV because at least we're a competitive team, but we're not building towards anything, and eventually this is going to have to be torn down anyway. So they say, our best chance is to get a top pick because those are the guys that are most likely to be the best stars. Let's just get one of those top picks and hope that that's our avenue. The only avenue to do that is through the NBA draft lottery. What I've always said is that's why I was all for flattening the odds, which this kind of doesn't do, but I think it manipulates it in a way that I'm almost okay with. That's why I was okay with flattening the odds, because I said, listen, like, again, we've seen the Portland Trail Blazers in this postseason, and we've seen the good moments that they had. If they were in this draft lottery, if they got the number 1 pick, it'd be awesome. Yeah, oh, great, wow. That's a young team. Clearly, they're not good enough to win a championship. Clearly, they're not, like, an upcoming dynasty. But if they got the number 1 pick, it'd be like, oh, good. Okay, that's a small market team that's now going to be in a position to maybe now be a threat. Or now they at least have the avenue to rebuild their team in a way to build it around a young guy. And let's see what they do. Like, I don't think some of these... The idea that we need to give the Utah Jazz number 1 pick in the draft in order for the league to be functional, or we need to give the Washington Wizards the number 1 pick in the draft in order for the league to be functional, is silly. Those teams have always been terrible for the most part, at least for the Jazz, since Darren and Carlos Boozer have been gone, and the Wizards forever basically. Like, those teams have been terrible and the league's been fine. We don't need this idea. This is not the NFL. We don't need it to where we need all 32 teams to have an opportunity to have prosperity, because it doesn't exist and it's not possible. But we do need to have some level of integrity with the sport where we don't have multiple teams saying that let's just lose as much as we possibly can, and regardless of how it makes the product look on the floor, regardless of what it does to the local fan bases night in and night out, We don't care as long as we're able to get ourselves in the best position possible. And if you believe the lottery is not rigged, that is the best position possible to get you a franchise-changing player that could eventually get you out of that poverty and make you a championship contender. Because those teams don't have any other avenue. They can't trade for a star. They can't sign a star. That's the problem. I think with this proposal, I think this is pretty fine. I think this is much better than what we have. We'll see. I'm curious to see how it ends up shaking out. But I'm happy that they at least are going to hammer these teams at the very, very bottom. And I think what you'll end up seeing is teams that are not good play their guys. And they're going to play, and they're going to, be in a position where, yes, they'll take some nights off. Teams that are, there was a weird situation with this year's lottery with there's such a big gap between the play-in and the playoff and the non-playing teams in the West. Like, some of those teams, maybe they'll be able to afford to rest a guy every now and then, but they're not going to play around like some of these other teams where they're going to say, hey, listen, we don't care. We'll lose every game if we have to in order to get to a better lottery spot. You won't have that anymore. And I know it's been unpopular for some people. I am totally fine with those playing teams getting a lottery pick. I think that, again, it should be a reward for you, not a penalty, to be in a position to get a lottery pick. And I think if you say, oh, hey, listen, you fought your ass off, you got yourself in a playing situation, okay, you weren't able to maybe be one of the top 6 teams, or you didn't make the playoffs, that's fine. Here, you get some lottery picks as well. Or if you just barely got into the playoffs, again, here's some lottery picks. That I'm fine with. I don't think that is at all unfortunate or unfair in any way. I think that makes sense, honestly. That was, to me, the natural progression. And I don't think you'll see a situation, I guess the other question comes, where you see teams try to get themselves into the play-in in order to get a lottery ball. I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. It just seems like there has to be a lot of galaxy brain managing for that kind of movement to happen. Whereas how the system is right now is pretty easy. It's pretty easy to be like, simply, hey, let's just get ourselves into the lottery by any means. And we don't really care how much we lose. And we don't care that they flatten the odds. We'll just, as long as we're there, we got a shot. Now it's a little bit like, okay, well, again, there's some idea that you can't just be just absolutely god awful and that be it. So that's the new lottery system that apparently is going to be in place. Just also reading little things from this article. The league will also have expanded disciplinary authority to regulate tanking and have the option to reduce teams' lottery odds and or modify teams' draft position under the proposal. All of the involved parties have brainstormed and developed several concepts over the last few months, finding this new 16-team format that high-ranking officials across NBA believe will incentivize losing while drawing lottery balls for all 16 qualifying teams. It also incentivizes winning, particularly during the second half of the season, as the teams ranked near the bottom 3 want to get out of the relegation zone, while teams above them work for their victories to stay out of the relegation zone. Which, again, that part of it makes sense. Like, I think that you're gonna have those teams that once you get to the second half of the season, you say, yo, we're right there, we're 4th or we're 5th. Like, yo, we can't start messing around and losing games. And these teams are typically pretty close. Again, the difference between the worst team in the NBA and the 6th worst team is not that much. So I think that this is a fine proposal. Again, it's up to me. I would just put every team in the play-in and in the lottery, at the very least, just flatten their odds. Or I would simply just put everybody in the lottery. That's how I would do it if I wanted to just completely get rid of tanking. That would get rid of tanking. I think if you're looking for a secondary option, I think that this is okay. I don't know why that other option found its way onto the internet as the leading option. Again, that notion that it was going to be the first 10 teams had certain odds and the last 4 or 6 teams had certain odds. That made no sense. We still won't. I guess we'll never know how that proposal somehow made its way to the internet as the lead proposal. A lot of people didn't love that. I certainly was one of them. But I think this one you're talking about right now definitely I think is a lot better. So we'll keep an eye on that. But those are 2 breaking stories as we come in here at 6:40. NBA lottery reform proposal being finalized. It's a new format that will now include 16 teams instead of 14 teams. So basically in a 30-team league, you're talking about, the top 7 seeds essentially they're not going to be in this lottery. It's going to be the play-in teams, and then whoever sneaks in as an 8th seed. Those will be now the teams that are going to be invested in the lottery. And again, so you have even a playoff team that gets in there and has an 8th seed. I think that's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. Lottery odds much more flattened, much more simple. Again, just doing simple lottery balls as opposed to doing the combinations. They've simplified this in a way that I think that is good for the league. Staying with the NBA, though, we'll get to the non-breaking stories as we move forward here. I want to talk a little bit about the NBA playoffs. We got some big games tonight. I'll actually preview the slate tonight real quick. For those that are anticipating the games tonight, you'll have 3 games. First is 7, you got Boston against Philly. Philly is trying to stave off elimination. Philly made the decision to bring back Joel Embiid for Game 4 as they were down 2-1. It turned out to not work out well for them at all. They lost a heartbreaking Game 3 after winning Game 2 to make it a 1-1 series. They lost a heartbreaking Game 2 where Jason Tatum hit some huge shots on the stretch. Peyton Pritchard hit some huge shots down the stretch. Embiid comes in on his white horse, try to save the day in Game 4, and the chemistry was off. The team seemed to be too reliant on a Joel Embiid who was nowhere near 100%. And the Boston Celtics really capitalized on that in a major way. It ended up, I think, being a mistake to probably put him out there if that's what how they were going to utilize him. Or if they were going to utilize him that way, the team should have maybe used him more as a decoy or more as simply a big body. As opposed to trying to feature him the way that they did, because that did not work. So now Philly's on the brink of elimination. Boston's going home. I would expect Boston to win this game tonight, but again, we'll have to see how things end up shaking out. In Philly, that game starts in about 20 minutes. You got the Knicks hosting the Hawks for a pivotal Game 5. We have a series that's tied 2-2 at Madison Square Garden. This is going to be a fun one to watch as well. Fun to see how the Knicks continue to adjust how the Hawks have guarded Jalen Brunson, which has been outstanding. The Knicks in the last game featured a lot more Karl Towns, a lot more OG Anunoby. Both guys have had a really good series because those guys have had favorable matchups in this series. And the Knicks throttled the Hawks in the last game to tie the series and kind of quelch a lot of the negativity around the team after they lost 2 games in a row to the Hawks, Games 2 and Game 3. How they respond now in Game 5 will be interesting. How the Hawks respond after the Knicks seem to find something with, again, Karl Towns and OG Anunoby and the problems they caused for New York. And the Hawks now facing a little bit of pressure now. You know, you lost home court advantage. They've shown that they can win at the Garden, but the Atlanta Hawks, besides one of these games, they basically played from behind for the entire series. Before I did the show today, I saw Draymond Green from the Draymond Green show. He was like, oh, you know, the Hawks have actually dominated this series. The Knicks, you shouldn't feel good about where you're at. That is just not true. That is just BS. That's baloney. It's nonsense. The Knicks have actually dominated the series. The Knicks were up big in the first game. The Knicks were up big in the second game and blew a lead, and they blew them out in the fourth game. So the only game where the Knicks struggled mightily and they were playing from behind was Game 3, and they actually ended up taking the lead in the Game 3. So, you know, I'm not going to get in on Draymond Green anymore, but I'm just saying for those narratives that may have been out there about how the series is gone, it is even, it's 2-2, and it's anybody's ball game. Every game is different. I think if you're looking at the totality of the series, the Knicks have been the better team. It's about will they play better and will they play smarter, and that's a whole different conversation, which is why the Hawks are so live. The Hawks are guarding them really well. The Hawks are playing extremely hard. They didn't get shots to fall in Game 4. They'll have to get those shots to fall in Game 5. They want to have opportunity to, if they get this game, be in a real spot to maybe close the Knicks out in Game 6. So that'll be one to watch for you Knicks fans out there. Orange and Blue Bloods is out for the previous game, but obviously that's going to be moot in about an hour and 15 minutes. There'll be a new episode of Orange and Blue Bloods out after Game 5. So if you're a Knicks fan, you want to catch that content. Videos of that those podcast episodes are up on New Generation Media's YouTube, so be sure that you have to subscribe to the channel, and also make sure you search Orange and Blue Bloods wherever you get your podcast. Not New Generation Podcast Network. Search Orange and Blue Bloods wherever you get your podcast to catch those episodes of the Knicks and talking about those recap episodes of the Knicks playoff games against the Atlanta Hawks. And then finally tonight, you got Spurs, you got Trailblazers. Victor Wembanyama came back into the lineup after missing just one game with the concussion. It was a weird game. The Trailblazers got up big, and the Spurs kind of walked them down as they got more familiar, more comfortable, and they kind of were able to match the desperation from the Blazers, knowing that they kind of had to win this game in order to keep themselves in the series. Obviously, this being their last home game before the series shifted back to San Antonio. And San Antonio were able to make the adjustment and take care of business down the stretch with Wembanyama. Once again, is a two-way terror, and he was in this game. So now I think if you're the Blazers, you find yourself in a lot of trouble, right? Victor in the last game, and coming back from a concussion, he finishes with 27 points. He finishes with 7 blocks. I felt like if he was going to be a part of the series, the Blazers really didn't have a shot in this series. When he got hurt, I thought the Blazers were more live. Not getting that game 3 was crucial. That was a game that they were in. That was a game that they absolutely had a chance to win. And Dylan Harper was absolutely phenomenal in game 3. Then they got a big game for De'Aaron Fox in game 4 in the game with Wembanyama. Comes back and he has a big game. So now I think if you're the Blazers, you're in a tough spot. They very well could be going home tonight. So we'll see how the rest of these games shake out. NBA playoffs has been entertaining. No question about that. No question about it so far. Various different surprises when it comes to these series. Maybe not so much in these 3, though. The Knicks-Hawks series is still in the balance, so that one certainly is a little bit of a surprise. But there has been a surprise with what's happening with the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. The Detroit Pistons right now are on the brink of elimination. The Pistons will be playing for their playoff lives tomorrow after dropping Game 4 on Monday to the Orlando Magic. The Magic are looking to become the 7th team in NBA history to be an 8 seed and advance for the second round of the playoffs after beating a number 1 seed. This has been a complete exposure of what is a limited Detroit Pistons offense. The Pistons only have 3 guys right now that are averaging double figures. Cade Cunningham, Tobias Harris. Shout out to Tobias, former AAU teammate at Riverside Church. Shout out to Riverside Hawks. And Amen Thompson. That's it. No one else averaging double figures for a team that's the number 1 seed in the playoffs this year. A lot of attention has been on Jalen Duren. He is a guy that during the season has shot about 60+% from the field. He's averaging 19 and 10. He's the second All-Star on his team. He's right now averaging a little less than 10 points per game and 8 rebounds on about 46% for a guy that only shoots in the paint. He's been outplayed by Wendell Carter, outplayed by the bigs for the Orlando Magic, so much so I actually think that Isaiah Stewart has actually had a much better impact, at least he definitely did in these games in Orlando, a much better impact on the series in his minutes than Jalen Duren has in his minutes. So you're looking at an Orlando team that has not shot the ball well. They're not a great shooting team. They're still not a great offensive team. But they have matched Detroit's physicality. And sometimes you get into a playoff series, because we've been asking what's been wrong with the Orlando Magic really for a lot of this season. Maybe not so much me. I thought they were a little overrated. But there were a lot of people that were really excited about the Magic and thought that they could potentially be a team that can come out of the Eastern Conference. As crazy as that sounds, that was what people were saying. So you're like, what happened? A lot of it's been the fact that their offense is not evolved, even though they added Desmond Bane, who was supposed to be kind of a finishing piece. In some ways, he's better than Mikal Bridges, but in some ways he's kind of felt like they're Mikal Bridges, where it's like, we traded for this guy. We thought if we got this guy now, we're a chance to win a title. And it feels like, for them, they feel like they got worse. The Knicks, they feel like they made more of the same. For the Magic, they feel like a worse team. So again, what has happened? But sometimes when you face a team and they present a certain identity of being the bullies on the block, of being a tough, defensive first, physical team. When that was previously and at times has been your identity, sometimes you're able to top back into that. Sometimes you end up saying you got to meet force with force. And I think that's a little bit of what's happening in this series. I think the Orlando Magic in some ways have kind of found their identity within this series, because I think that's been the whole issue, is they've lost their identity completely. This has always been a physical, defensive first, athletic team, and they just haven't played that way for much of the season. They've also dealt with some injuries, obviously, as well, to Franz Wagner, and he is injured again. He may not be able to play for Game 5, but I think the Orlando Magic realized, wait a minute, we are a physical team. We can play defense. We have an opportunity against an offensive team that really doesn't present that many shot makers, that we can impose our will on this team. And let's see who the real bullies in the block are. And the Pistons, I will admit, I was dead wrong. I thought this was actually a good matchup for the Pistons, because I actually thought, okay, the Magic will want to play their style, and I thought the Pistons would be able to impose their will. Could not have been more wrong. I thought that if they faced the Hornets, they'd be in a lot worse situation, because the Hornets would be able to get up and down. The Pistons can beat up on those finesse teams. they can beat up on the Orlando Magic. And they don't have the talent discrepancy that would allow their talent to overcome that. Like, for example, the Knicks last year, first of all, the Knicks actually are physical, and they do have a lot more physical toughness than they give them credit for. That's the Tom Thibodeau effect. But last year, the Knicks were able to overcome Detroit's physicality with just being more talented. Like, at the end of the day, the Detroit Pistons could beat them up all they want. But if Karl-Anthony Towns at 7 foot tall is taking a step back three, I guess your center, to go ahead in a huge playoff game, like, you can't out physical that. Like, they don't have anybody on their team that could do what he could do. Besides Cade Cunningham, they have nobody on their team that could do what Jalen Brunson could do. And Cade Cunningham didn't have the ability or didn't have the experience to be able to play the way Jalen Brunson was playing consistently. So the Knicks just had too much talent. With this series, it's not like the Magic are a super talented team, but I think they're looking at the Pistons and saying they don't overwhelm us with talent. To where, yeah, we'll beat you up. We'll be physical. We also have athletes. Saw Kane with one of the dunks of the playoffs so far, just absolutely posterizing Jalen Duren. They have athletes. Jalen Suggs is a great athlete. They got strong physical defenders. They got bodies, right? They got guys who can do what the Pistons are doing, and the Pistons haven't been able to come up with a plan B that doesn't include just trying to beat you up. Like, they're trying to out-physical a team that can't be pushed around. And you're seeing, again, an offense that severely lacks a second option and a second shot creator. It's funny watching this series because one of the big stars of this playoff so far has been C.J. McCollum for the Atlanta Hawks. He's been phenomenal in this series against the New York Knicks. And he's a guy that anybody could have had. The Wizards basically were just holding on to him until somebody traded someone of value for him, basically, or they were able to get some salary cap relief or get a draft pick. That's why he was there. And anybody could have had this guy. It was early in the year. It was kind of a weird trade. Obviously, Trae Young was the first guy, essentially, to get traded this year. But C.J. McCollum actually would have been a perfect fit for the Pistons. He's exactly what they need. They needed another, probably guard. It could have been a wing too, but probably another guard who could be a secondary ball handler, who could create his own shot and lead offenses for stretches of games where Cade Cunningham's not out there. They just do not have that guy. I don't know. And you talk about the trade deadline, the move they ended up making was for Kevin Huerter, which they thought we needed to add more shooting, so let's put another shooter out there. Kevin Huerter wouldn't shoot the ball that well this year, though he has a profile as a good shooter, so even that was a little questionable to me. But they desperately needed another shot creator, man. Like that, and you see it. And Cade Cunningham is asked to do it all against a team that is guarding him well, against defenders that are guarding him well, and he's struggling a little bit. Like, he's averaging almost 7 turnovers a game in this series. He's scoring 29 points a game, but he's shooting at a pretty low percentage. I think he's around 42% for this series. He had a rough fourth quarter last night after a really good fourth quarter game 3, even though they lost. And I think the Pistons are in serious trouble. Now, the Franz Wagner injury, I think, does give them an avenue to make a comeback. I'm not going to say this series is over because Franz Wagner is dealing with what they're saying is a calf strain. With what we've seen with torn Achilles tendons, and shout out to Dante DiVincenzo, that's a terrible injury he had, and I wish him all the best as he recovers from his torn Achilles that he had in Game 4 of their series in that now 3-2 matchup between the T-Wolves and the Nuggets. I hear calf, and I'm like, sit down, buddy. I'm not putting you out there until you're 100%. It just seems like we're seeing too much more evidence that calf strains are leading to Achilles tears. So I don't feel good if I'm a Magic fan that your second best player in the series, arguably your best player in the series, is dealing with this calf strain, and I wouldn't be rushing to put him out there at all. He couldn't finish the last game. Now he has what they've confirmed is a strain. I don't think you see him in Game 5. I don't know if you see him the rest of the series. So the Pistons will have an avenue to potentially make a series of this, but they're going to have to find a way to get someone going offensively outside of Cade Cunningham and Tobias Harris, who's been really good this series. He showed up. He was great in the last game. He's not making his threes, but he's scoring everywhere else. They've got to find somebody else. I don't know who it is. The guy I would probably circle as guy that I'm kind of confused is having such a rough series is Karis LeVert. But to be honest, I'd argue this is who Karis LeVert has been in the playoffs. This is kind of why Cleveland gave up on him, because he was supposed to be kind of one of these backup guards for Cleveland that could come in and be a shot creator off the bench and look for his own offense, and he wasn't doing it. So they got rid of him because they're like, you're not really providing anything. They said, let's get DeAndre Hunter in here. Let's see if we can get a defender, because if we're not gonna help Donovan Mitchell in any way, then what difference does it make? I remember a couple years ago, he was terrible against the Knicks in the postseason. He's kind of doing the same thing. Like last night or a couple nights ago, what is he? He plays 25 minutes. He plays 25 minutes, takes 4 shots. He's 1 for 4. He hasn't scored more than 2 points in the series. He's been invisible basically in this series. So I don't know. The Pistons are in trouble. There's no question about it. They're catching a little bit of a break with the injury to Franz Wagner, but I think if you're a Pistons fan, you can't feel good. And I think that for a lot of those folks who were trying to speak into existence, perhaps this idea that, you guys are underrating, the Pistons, and the Pistons are the team to beat, and, they're the new bad boys, all that stuff. I always want to see you do it in the postseason before I just crown you. That's just how I am. And I was surprised at how many people, especially given the Pistons' success against the Knicks and the Celtics, and then people pointed to that and saying, well, this means that this is a new team in the Eastern Conference, or that those other teams were extremely flawed. And they may be flawed. We'll see. The Celtics still have games to play. The Knicks certainly have big games to play. But the issues people have with the Pistons that they were able to skirt over in the regular season because guys were shooting the ball much better and playing with a lot freer in the regular season. You get to the playoffs, teams scout you way better. Those jump shots that look pretty are going in the regular season with no pressure. Shooting that ball feels like shooting a medicine ball because of how much pressure there is on every shot. It's different. It's a different game. And I think maybe basketball fans and people who got really excited about this Pistons team learning a valuable lesson about, like, regular season is important. I hate those people that say that it means nothing. It doesn't mean something. But you do have to take it with a grain of salt because this was a team that had some flaws. They didn't address them because they were playing so well. And now they faced maybe the worst matchup they possibly could given their issues. And now they're getting exposed. So we'll see. I'm not calling the series over because if Franz was healthy, I'd say the series was over. Can't say that now because I think of where they're at with, the fact that Franz is hurt and, Cade, I think, is still the best player on the floor. But this is going to continue to be tough sledding for the Pistons. This is going to be a tough road to try to get 3 straight games to get to the next round. But that's what they're going to need. They're going to get this. They got to get this thing to 7. They got to push it by winning tomorrow night. And then we'll see what happens from there. But the Pistons definitely in a lot of trouble. And for Jalen Duren, if you're the Pistons, I'll be very curious how they handle this offseason if they don't get this thing done. Because Jalen Duren is going to be up for a contract extension. And that could also be part of why he's not playing well. There's also a lot of conversation about, his ex-relationship with Angel Reese. And he's playing against Wendell Carter, who is currently dating Angel Reese. And perhaps there's some mind games being played with that matchup. And that is attributing to his poor play. I would hope, in terms of just him being a professional and an all-star, that has nothing to do with why he's playing so poorly. I want to give him that much rope. But he doesn't seem to be responding to this series at all in any way. I wonder if you're the Pistons, is he a guy, instead of giving him a max contract, which is maybe what he would have been commanding had this continued, this postseason run, the season continued for him, this great year again where he became an all-star. I wonder if they look at him and say, this is the young piece maybe we shop to get Cade some help. Because we do have Isaiah Stewart, we have a center, we have a guy who in theory could be a starter. But we have to find somebody that can score to help Cade. Like, we can't continue to do this. And Jalen, he's a young player, so it's not like he's not going to develop. But he can't be your second best player. He's your second best player. You're not winning anything. And I think we've seen for sure. I think those who were high on the Pistons to maybe get to the NBA Finals, I would say bump that. I cannot see this team. Now, the Cavs are a whole nother story. We'll see if they even get past the next round because of all the struggles they're having with the Raptors. But I can't see them, with their issues offensively, getting through 2 more rounds against good teams to get to the finals. I don't see that. Could they win this series? Yes. Are they getting to the finals? With that offense? Hell no. That's how I would look at it right now. So we'll see what happens with the Pistons. Another team that will be playing on Wednesday will be the Los Angeles Lakers. Big news for them. there's optimism that Austin Reeves will be able to return for Game 5. Austin Reeves has been sidelined with a oblique strain, and he's been hurt basically since that fateful game in OKC where Luka Doncic hurt his hamstring. Then we didn't even know Austin Reeves got hurt, and the next day they're like, "Oh, by the way, Austin Reeves is out for a month." You're like, "What the hell? When did that happen?" So, but it seems like he's doing well, and it sounds like if they really wanted to push it, he could have maybe went in Game 4. He was questionable for that game, and then they ended up deciding to not play him. So now he comes into potentially a Game 5 for the Lakers at home, which is a closeout game for the Lakers. And like I said last week, and I'll continue to say because we're at this point now, we got to give, again, JJ Redick and this Lakers team a lot of credit. And LeBron a lot of credit, man. Like, even with Kevin Durant and the injury that he's dealing with, I still don't think that a team that didn't have Reeves and didn't have Luka had any business being up 3-0, let alone now 3-1 in this series against the Rockets. That is insane to me. It speaks to so many of the issues in that Houston orbit and the massive changes that are probably going to have to come for that team. It may mean a coaching change. It's certainly going to have to mean a roster change. They're going to have to make some really big decisions, I think, on a lot of guys. I think definitely Jabari Smith, definitely Reed Shepard, definitely Tari Eason, and I also even think Alperen Şengün. He'd be the guy I'd be less inclined to move off of, but if I can get a star big for him, or a guy who's a little more established, I would be talking. Because, again, he's an all-star, and he's going against a team that is completely decimated. And he hasn't been able to make the kind of impact necessary to overcome his I guess you could say his Batman or his wingman and Kevin Durant being hurt. So there's some big questions to be answered in Houston. As people have said, get off my Dickerson seems to have spoken a lot of truth, as messed up as those burner account messages were. It seems to have spoken a lot of truth about the issues that the Houston Rockets have had. He's someone that would be quick to blame anybody if it is indeed Kevin Durant. He's quick to blame anybody and put other people as the reason why he's unable to accomplish the things that people are putting as goals for him, and he's putting goals for himself. But this is a team that's just that has issues and has flaws. And I think they're cooked. I don't think you're going to see a miraculous comeback. Kevin Durant is dealing with a bone bruise in his ankle. I don't think you're seeing him the rest of the series. I'll be honest. I think that's one of those injuries that sounds like it's not a big deal, but it is. It's not. We see Anthony Edwards is going to be out multiple weeks with a bone bruise of his knee. Kevin Durant tried to play on a bone bruise on his ankle and looked awful. So I'm not denying that he's hurt or questioning he's hurt. I think he's hurt, and I think he's not effective. If this team was a little better, maybe he'd say, okay, I can give it a go because the other guys can pick me up. They can't pick him up. They're not good enough. So I think I'm not risking myself out there for these guys. And this will kind of be the end. And I think the Rockets are also going to have questions about what they do with Kevin Durant. Because this is the thing about Durant as well. I was very surprised at how healthy he was this year. But what has happened to him is typically over the course of the season or entering the playoffs, he finds a way to get hurt. It's not his fault, but he's an older player. Despite the kind of conditioning he puts himself in, I think he puts himself in tip-top shape. It's just when you're that older and you're not LeBron James, you're going to find yourself with these injuries. And he has found a lot of injuries over the last 4 or 5 years. There's a good deal of wear and tear on KD. I think you got to ask yourself a question as well as, like, is this guy viable to be someone that we can rely upon to be ready for the playoffs come playoff time? He's extremely talented still. He can still score. But if he's not available by the time the playoffs start, then what difference does it make? And that is, I think, a real question mark to have about Kevin Durant for the Rockets. So there are a lot of questions for the Houston Rockets. Their series is not over. But with Austin Reeves coming back, if you're a Laker fan and you're the Lakers, you got to feel like that should, at worst, just be an emotional boost for a team that has just simply scrapped and clawed and just outsmarted a Houston Rockets team that just is not a high IQ basketball team, which has been my problem with them all year. Is they're not a high IQ team. The games they've been losing, especially that terrible Game 3, that was particularly abysmal. But only one other team has lost in that fashion, being up 6 with 30 seconds left in the ball, and that is unfortunately the New York Knicks in last year's Game 1 against the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Everyone else has won that game in the last 20 years. course, the Rockets will be the next team to do that because they've done versions of this during the regular season. They don't close well. So in the playoffs, it's all about closing. Without Kevin Durant, they got no shot to close these games. So the Rockets, by all intents and purposes, are cooked. Lakers are getting more healthy. It'd behoove them to move on and beat this team. We'll see what happens with Luka Doncic. You got the Thunder waiting. But this has been, no question, a successful season, in my opinion, for the Lakers thus far. If they're able to beat the Houston Rockets and advance to the second round of the playoffs, given the expectations that people have for them, which just wasn't that high. And again, for a team that was a 4 seed and was a 3 seed most of the year, they were spoken about as if they were an 8 seed. And here they are, 1 game away from advancing to the next round of the playoffs. So they will play on Wednesday. We'll, of course, be breaking down whatever those results are on Friday's edition of 40 Days and Counting. That will be Friday at 8 a.m. That's our morning show for the week. So make sure you guys check that out. Couple more things before we get out of here, man. This is a fun show so far. Again, you're watching 40 Days and Counting with your boy EJ Stewart, streaming live in multiple spots. Streaming live right now on YouTube, New Generation Media. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you like what we've talked about, whether it's been NCAA tournament expansion, whether it's been the NBA playoffs, whether it's been the lottery expansion and adjustments, get in the comment section. Let me know what you think about what the show has been so far. It has been a fun one for me. Also, if you are enjoying what's going on X, you can do the same thing. EJ_Stewart, where you'll find me on X. We're streaming live there as well. We're also streaming live on Instagram, Action EJ. So shout out to the folks that are there on IG Live rocking with me today. There's been several people that have jumped on the IG Live throughout the show. So again, greatly appreciate you guys. And all episodes of 40 Days and Counting get posted to our podcast channel. Just search New Generation Podcast Network wherever you get your podcast. 7 o'clock coming up. So you got the Celtics and the Sixers about to tip off. Knicks tipping off in an hour against the Hawks. And then you got later today Blazers and Suns. That's going to be the nightcap later tonight. Let's shift gears here. Let's talk about what's been going on in baseball. Big story out of baseball right now. So both the Phillies and the Red Sox have made managerial changes. You have Rob Thompson. He was fired today by the Philadelphia Phillies after they have started 9-19 in this season. Rob Thompson obviously took the Phillies to the World Series a couple years ago and then took them to the NLCS the following year. They've been to the playoffs every year. He's been their manager. Of course, he came in as an interim in 1 year, and that's when they got to the World Series. So he enjoyed a contract extension. He, by no counts, I think had his job on the line entering this year. But the terrible start and the aging roster that is supposed to be talented and has a lot of money attached to it is underachieved in a major way this year. So Phillies make a change. That, of course, being led by Dave Dombrowski. He's their general manager. And they actually ended up pursuing someone who got fired just a few days before. So Alex Cora, who is the longtime manager for the Boston Red Sox, he has won a world championship for the Boston Red Sox. They started 10-17 this season, and then they decided to make a change and fire him. So he got fired along with 5 other coaches on his staff. They pretty much cleaned house in Boston. There have been a lot of stories about why he has gotten fired. There seems to be a major disconnect. He has, of course, survived several different front offices. Dombrowski, he was with initially. Then he was with Heim. And now a new front office that's been involved here that has been a lot more analytics-based, has been prone to want to perhaps not necessarily spend so much money and instead value versatility and value getting the most out of rosters as opposed to just kind of throwing money at problems. And that has met a disconnect with Alex Cora. A lot of disconnect has apparently stemmed with Trevor Story and his role in the team. There are concerns that Trevor Story is washed and that he is no longer the player that he once was. And Alex Cora is someone who has been very loyal to Trevor Story. He has batted him to start the year. Trevor Story didn't get off to a good start. And the team was surprised at how much he was still valuing Story as one of the cornerstone players of this team when they had no longer looked at Story in that fashion. So Cora, also question marks about, whether or not he's really getting the most out of young players. They are a very young roster. They were a team that I think for the Boston front office that they thought, while young, they thought could really come in and make a lot of noise this year. And they've just been terrible. So they fired Cora. Dombrowski, of course, who was with Cora in Boston, he said he was talking to Cora on Saturday because Cora was like, I can't believe I just got fired, man. That's crazy. He's like, wow, buddy, that's crazy. And then Sunday, when they decided, we're going to fire our guy, they said, hey, would you take this job if we fired our manager? Because we're definitely going to fire our manager. So Cora was offered the Phillies job. He apparently, according to Dave Dombrowski, told Philadelphia that thanks, but no thanks. I would prefer, if he thought about it, I prefer to, now that I'm making all this guaranteed money that's coming my way, to not work. I want to spend this time with my family, spend this time with my kids. So that is why Don Mattingly, who is currently their bench coach, now becomes the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies moving forward. The Red Sox obviously have also upgraded to an interim manager as well. I think of these two firings, I think I'm more surprised. I'm definitely more surprised by Rob Thompson, I think. Cora, because of the fact that this is, again, a different front office that he never quite got on the same page with, I'm not that surprised that they decided it was time for Bro to get out of there. Like, I think that the Red Sox, there's been a lot of frustration in Boston with who the Red Sox have been for the last 6 or 7 years. Like, when Theo Epstein got there, yes, he certainly brought a money, I don't want to say money ball, but he brought an analytics approach to the team. They definitely spent a ton of money on free agents and trades and things like that. But he spent money still. And those are the glory days of the Boston Red Sox for a lot of fans now. They have been far removed from those days. That is not who the Red Sox are anymore. And I think that has become a problem for where they stand right now. They are now a team that, again, is way more invested in, again, they are invested in analytics, but it's also about, again, trying to maximize guys who may be on younger, guys who may be cheaper, and finding these, kind of, diamonds in the rough. And the problem with Cora for them was he wasn't getting the most out of these guys that they thought was better. Cora apparently just didn't think his roster was that good. And to be honest, it wasn't. The Red Sox do not have a very good team. They're not deep. They're young in a lot of spots. I'm surprised they've been this bad, but they're an above average to average team in my opinion. Craig Breslow has been running the team for the last few years, and they did not see eye to eye. So Cora, I'm not surprised he went. Thompson, I'm a little surprised, not because of, they had the worst record in baseball next to the Mets, and I want to get to the Mets in a second too. But Thompson, I'm surprised only because he's been to the playoffs every year, and the Phillies, in terms of their players of the team, they've typically responded to him. I don't know. It's surprising how bad they've been this year. I don't think it helped him that they kind of asked him, what's going on? And he said he had no idea. That's apparently what he told the front office. He also had no answers to why the team was struggling so much. So you don't love to hear that. And in a town like Philadelphia, they're not going to have a lot of patience with you. So I still thought, though, that of the terrible teams that we've had, all the disappointing teams we had to start this season, which team did I think had the best chance to turn it around and still make something of their season? I would have told you Philly. I would have said that Philly, they'll get Zach Wheeler back. Some of these stars that are struggling the way they have so far, I can't imagine they're going to keep struggling. That they would have found their way out of this and they could make a run still. I don't think that Boston, I think Boston's kind of cooked. And if we want to add another team that's been super disappointing this year, that would be the New York Mets. I don't feel good about the Mets either. Now, I have no idea why the Mets haven't fired Carlos Mendoza at this point. It is stunning to me as the Mets have now lost 3 in a row after they got swept by the Colorado Rockies. It is stunning to me that there have been multiple managers fired this year before Carlos Mendoza. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is all Carlos Mendoza's fault, because I think it's very clear that if you're going to start pointing fingers, the first ones have to go to the general manager and the owner, or the president and the owner. That being David Stearns and that being Steve Cohen. But it is quite obvious that the team now, for not just the month of April and now some of March, but also the months of now last September and August, are not responding to the manager. They have been the worst team in baseball pretty much since last August. That's a long time for a manager with a $350+ million payroll to be leading the worst team in baseball and keep your job. At a certain point in time, forget about what's fair and what's right. This is not a fair and what's right and just world that is Major League Baseball. It is simply about we have to make a change in order to see if this roster responds to a different voice, because they are absolutely not responding to Carlos Mendoza. But I think the reason why we have not seen a firing yet is because Carlos Mendoza, while he is the manager, they have removed most of his staff. This is an entirely different staff that Carlos Mendoza had from the last few years since he's been manager. The Mets came in and said, we're giving you a new pitching coach. We're giving you new hitting coaches. They adjusted everything. They got rid of a bunch of the first base coach that was gone, who was awesome. They got rid of the third base coach, who's been horrendous this year. They have the front office and ownership. They have been responsible for the coaching staff that has been around Carlos Mendoza. I think the problem becomes, well, if that staff that we tried to empower Mendoza with isn't helping Mendoza get out of this, the likelihood is that one of those guys is going to have to be the manager, and they have given us no good returns yet. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why, because I think they're like, listen, like, we thought maybe the people around Mendoza was the problem. We hired people that we liked, and they have done nothing for this squad. So what does that say about us? And number two, I think that they're looking at this situation, and I think they want to give some grace to the fact that Soto was gone, some grace to the fact that Lindor had the hand injury that he's been playing through, and he's playing a little better, but he just has not been the same guy that he usually is. And I think that what they understand is if Mendoza gets fired, or when, I think it's a matter of if not when, it's going to look like he's going to be a fall guy. Because this is a general manager and a president of baseball operations in David Stearns, who looked at the Mets nucleus that in his first year took the team to a NLCS 2 wins away from getting to the World Series. And he looked at them and said, they're not good enough. I know better. Let me get this thing right and get rid of some of the guys that were instrumental to those teams and those team successes. Now, that team also had a lot of heartbreaking losses, a lot of high-profile failures, mainly last year's failure to make the postseason. I'm not sitting here to defend that roster from before. They had their failures. And I wasn't necessarily someone that was against making an adjustment. But the reality is, the team that they have now, that is the David Stern machine, looks more like a broken Frankenstein. They brought in a shortstop to play third base, who's not a great defensive shortstop, and he's not hitting for some reason. They brought in a second baseman to play first base, who now can't stay healthy, so he can't even play first base anymore. They brought up Carson Bench, who looked like he wasn't ready. These are all David Stearns' decisions. David Stearns has done a terrible, terrible, terrible job putting together this team. Terrible. And the only saving grace he has is if these guys, who are typically better offensive players than they have shown, that they start to play to their baseball averages and to their baseball cards. That is their only saving grace here. This idea that they were going to be this run prevention team is gone. That's not who they are. They've actually gotten decent pitching, but that hasn't mattered because they can't hit a lick. Can't hit a lick. This is one of the worst offensive Mets teams I've ever seen, and it's crazy considering how much money has been spent on this team. They can't hit a lick. So that is going to be the first thing that's going to have to change in order for this Mets thing to get turned around. But when it comes to Mendoza and why he's still here, I think the reality is as soon as Mendoza gets gone, we're all circling and pointing at David Stern saying, what the hell are you going to do to fix this? Because a lot of this is his mess. This is not Carlos Mendoza's mess. The team's not responding to him. There's things I wish he would change. I wish Mendoza would be more demonstrative. I wish Mendoza would get after guys more. I think this team desperately needs a kick in the ass. But a lot of that is cosmetics. The actual foundation of the team doesn't make sense. It just does not make sense, and it was not put together. And I'll raise my hand, and I was someone who put David Stearns off the hook after how he brought in Peralta and bringing in Bichette. I thought he rebounded from those early mishaps. Turns out Bichette's been underwhelming. Peralta's been underwhelming. those moves did not do anything to make up for the losses that the Mets have had. So this has been an utter disaster for all three of these teams. Two of them have, to their credit, made moves and decided, okay, let's make something happen here, and let's find a way to at least try to stop the bleeding. I think that the reasoning is those front offices are safer from their standpoint. I think David Stearns, even though he's kind of new, I think that there is New York. Not that Philly and Boston isn't, but New York is a huge pressure cooker, and because of the unpopular decisions that he made, he is under a lot more stress, and Steve Cohen's under a lot more stress. I saw it today. Shout out to Ian O'Connor. I know Ian O'Connor has been on Maggie Pro, so we booked him on our show, so it was great having him. I've always been a big fan of his, and he said something that I've been saying. I had said 2 years ago, and it's something that I think we can now say definitively. The Steve Cohen era so far is a flop. It's a flop. There's no other way to describe it. This is a guy who came in saying that, again, championship, within 5 years, championship contention within 3. This is what we were talking about with Steve Cohen, and it felt like because of the nature of baseball and the ability to pay your way out of poverty, that seemed actually feasible. And yet what we've seen is inconsistency. We've seen various different general managers and changes to the foundation in terms of who's calling the shots, and a roster that looks completely lost. Completely lost. What happened? What happened to all the promises about what this team was supposed to be and who the Mets were supposed to be and what the identity they were trying to establish? They have no identity. It's like just the Mets are starting to feel a lot like the Brooklyn Nets. A team with a lot of money and pizzazz that has been infused into the brand, but no substance. Absolutely none. And Steve Cohen, who was supposed to be a fan at heart and was doing this as kind of like a service to the Mets fans and service to the city, he's failed. He's failed at his job. He hasn't done a good job. He's been terrible. We watched another team who was already spending money before he got here, but we watched another team come in and take his chain. He came in and said, I'm going to spend a lot of money and we're going to get the top guys and we're going to be a championship contender. And the Dodgers said, oh, really? Okay, watch this. And we watched the Dodgers get basically every top player except for Juan Soto for the last however many years. And all the guys that Cohen has brought in, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, Kodai Senga, who's now hurt again. Those are the old signings. And now we're talking about these new guys. We're talking about Bo Bichette. Where are the moves that have put the Mets on the pathway towards what I keep talking about is sustained success, consistent winning? The Mets under Steve Cohen should be a perennial winner. You can't win a championship every year. You can't even win your division every year. We know that's not realistic. It is realistic for the Mets with their resources to be a perennial winner, and they haven't even been able to do that. They've been hot and cold. They've been hit or miss. And the way the season has started has been an utter disgrace. Last thing, man, before we get out of here. I actually like this. And I know for some people they're going to say, are you crazy? Are you bugging? I'm not bugging. So, a little surprising story. A lot of these stories came in late, too. This was like a 4 p.m. drop or 4:50 drop or whatever. A lot of these stories came in late today, which is great. We got some new content. Jets are apparently considering adding Russell Wilson as their backup quarterback for this upcoming season. He had a meeting and a visit to one Jets drive. He met the coaching staff, met with the team, and there is, according to Zach Rosenblatt of The Athletic, real interest for Gang Green to sign Russell Wilson to be their backup quarterback. This is something that already has apparently been broached with Geno Smith. Geno Smith's going to come in and be the starting quarterback, but Russell Wilson is a guy that is being considered to be his potential backup, and I actually like it. I have no delusions of grandeur of who Russell Wilson is as a quarterback at this point in his career. Russell Wilson is cooked. We saw him with the Giants. He wasn't any good. We saw him with the Broncos. He was better than he was with the Giants, but he wasn't still that good. He's older. He's not as athletic. He has problems seeing over the line. We know these issues that Russell Wilson has. But what I do like about the idea of adding Russell Wilson to the quarterback room is, one, I think they clearly need to add a backup. Like Geno Smith and K. Klubnik is not going to be enough for, I think, Jet fans to feel like secure that if Geno got hurt, that they'd have a somewhat of a viable guy back there. Like K. Klubnik has played a ton of football in college. He had a disappointing senior year, which is why he slid all the way to the fourth round. Though the fourth round actually sounded a little rich for him. I was surprised he went that early, given the season he just had. But I think with Russ and having a young guy, K. Klubnik, in the QB room, I think adding Russ as a sounding board, adding him as another veteran on the team for a squad that has certainly lacked an identity pretty much since Aaron Glenn got there. Remember, their identity prior to Aaron Glenn was Aaron Rodgers. That was their identity. Everything was about Aaron Rodgers. It was about his way of life, his way of football, the support that he had around his team, and the support he had from the front office to be empowered to lead the team. It was all Aaron Rodgers. It was the book of Rodgers. And it was a book of lies, we realized. Like, lies in the sense that he wasn't good enough to lead that team. That was the reality. So putting all your eggs in the Rodgers basket ended up being a bad decision because the Knicks just weren't good enough to overcome his shortcomings, and the Jets, and he wasn't good enough to overcome the many Jet shortcomings, because it was a two-way street. They both were to blame for why that experiment failed. The Jets made the right move to say, we got to get rid of this guy and cut bait and just change. But the problem becomes, we get rid of Rodgers and all he becomes, and then you get rid of other high-end players like Sauce Gardner and like Quentin Williams. For as unhappy as they may have been and the issues they may have been, those guys were star players and they were the identity of the team, and that's gone. So I like the idea of adding someone with some cachet, someone with a name, someone that I think if it's someone he talks, people will listen to. It can't just be Aaron Glenn. It can't just be Garrett Wilson, and it damn sure it can't be these rookies. Like, you're gonna need some veteran guys, some guys again with some names, and you add Russell Wilson, you add Minka Fitzpatrick, you add Demario Davis. Okay, you're starting to see the makings of a team with some decent leadership. Some teams with some guys with some cachet, guys that have accomplished things in this league. And those guys, I'm not expecting. Minka is going to be an important player. I'm not expecting all these guys to be stars. I'm not expecting Demario Davis to be Demario Davis from 10 years ago, or Russell Wilson to be the Russell Wilson from 7, 8 years ago. But again, those guys I think are going to be good pieces to the locker room. Good pieces for the younger guys the Jets are going to be relying on. And I think this is actually a smart call. I'm 100% for bringing in Russell Wilson as a backup here, and we'll see if they end up pulling the cord on this, and see if they'll actually pull the trigger. That's the right word. They end up pulling the trigger on the Russell Wilson move, but I saw this and I said, hey, this actually makes a lot of sense. You know, Geno Smith, another guy who is obviously that leadership group as well, but you start to see, okay, this is a team that had no identity last year. You see some of the faces and some of the names, and they're names that people are familiar with. And again, if you're in that locker room, Minka Fitzpatrick is saying something, Demario Davis is saying something, Russell Wilson is saying something. I think that adds value. The only question I have for Russell Wilson, I mean, the fact that this is it for him, like, because I don't know for sure, but I know there's probably convenience with going to the Jets, having just finished the season with the Giants. I'm sure he lives in New Jersey. I'm sure for his family that will make life a lot easier. I'm sure Sierra will be happier being in the New York market. Though, I mean, she's from Atlanta, so who knows? But I'm sure there's opportunity to remain in the New York market where your husband still works and lives and plays, right? So I get it from that standpoint, but it does speak to just how far he has fallen that he has to seriously consider joining the Jets. And I hate to say that. I know that sounds like I'm doing the same old Jets thing. I don't like to do that kind of content. I think anybody can do it. I think it's very lowbrow. But it's just the facts. Like, the Jets they could not have their stock really any. Well, they had a good draft, but prior to the draft, stock couldn't have been any lower for where the franchise was. Let's say after the season, the stock couldn't have been any lower for where the Jets were. A lame duck coach who didn't want to call plays, but now is calling plays. He brought in Frank Reich, who I'm not sure anybody else would have hired as an offensive coordinator. And it feels like a all or nothing year in just year 2 for the Jets coaching staff. Questions about the commitment from the front office. And there will always remain questions about the Mad King, that is Woody Johnson. So not a great position to be in. For someone as accomplished and with the cachet of Russell Wilson, even on the way out, you would assume there may be softer landing spots to have a job in the NFL than the Jets. So the fact that he's seriously considering this tells me he has really no other options. And it does show you how much he has fallen from grace from that standpoint. Which is why I wonder why he's still doing this. And I should be very curious next time he does an interview, next time he does a podcast. The last time he did a podcast, that was awesome. I hope that's the new Russell Wilson we have. When he lit up Sean Payton that way, that was not a Russell Wilson we're used to seeing. We talked about it in 40 Days and 40 Nights. Like, I hope we get that Russell Wilson that's very candid about his career, very candid about what he thinks about the NFL now that he is towards the end of his career. But we saw him do a little bit of work for NFL and CBS towards the end of the last season. I thought that podcast interview, was a little bit of a trial balloon, a little bit of a soft launch maybe for what his post-career is going to be. I would assume the minute Russell Wilson decides not to play football, and as soon as he says to people, I want to be on television, he will be on television. He'll be paid very handsomely to do it. I think that he's a well-recognized name. He has crossover appeal. He, I hate, there's a lot of negative connotations of, he's articulate when you talk about a black man, but he's very good on camera. He's a very good talker. He carries himself very well. He totally could do that. He could totally be in the TV lane, and it would be lucrative for him, you would think. So I wonder why he's wanting to be the backup quarterback with Geno Smith with the Jets. I just, to me, it makes me wonder if this is a guy who can't let it go. Like, this is a guy who's been an athlete, multiple sports for a lot of his life, and has overcome a lot of odds. And it makes me wonder that this is a situation where, the league is kind of telling you one thing, but because of just what makes him happy and how he sees himself, he's not allowing what the league is telling him to be his reality. But it's going to be his reality one way or another. He's not going to continue to just keep getting jobs as backups for franchises that are just rudderless. Like, he went from one rudderless franchise with the Giants, who was the only team that would have made him a starter last year, to now a rudderless franchise in the Jets, which is probably the only team that would make him their quarterback number 2. And that is coming from the assumption that if he could have went anywhere else, he would have. So we'll end up seeing if they just end up signing him. I don't think there's anything precluding them from signing him. So we'll see how that goes. But I was surprised to see that. Russell Wilson, he met with the Jets. He very well could be a New York Jet. You could be seeing a quarterback room next year that includes Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, Kate Klubnik from Clemson. How about that? That's where we're going to leave it, man. Thank you guys so much. This was a fun episode, man. 40 days and counting with your boy, EJ Stewart. Again, we do 2 shows per week. We do a Tuesday show at 6 p.m. We do a Friday show at 8 a.m. So make sure you keep it obviously locked on the channel to catch these live streams. We are live Tuesday, 6 p.m., Friday, 8 a.m. You can catch us live on YouTube. New Generation Media is the channel. If you're listening to this podcast and you want to figure out how to watch it, New Generation Media on YouTube is the channel. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you, if you can, like the video. Make sure you get in the comment section. Let me know what you think about all the topics we talked about. I respond to the comments, even after the show. So if you have a comment, if you watch this later, you want to say something, I usually respond to all the comments we get. So comment in the comment section with whatever you want to talk about. All that engagement helps the show. Also catch me on X, EJ_Stewart, where this show also streams live. Instagram, Action EJs, where you'll find me, where we're streaming 40 days and counting. So if you're watching on there, shout out to you. And thank you again. Same thing. Like, comment, all those things help the show. And like I said before, all episodes get podcasted. So if you want to catch the podcast version of the show, just search New Generation Media wherever you get your podcast. You can catch all episodes of 40 Days and Counting. And like I said before, I also have my Knicks podcast, Orange and Blue Blood, which is now back. We've been recapping all the NBA playoff action with the New York Knicks. We'll have a post-game reaction to Game 5, which is going to tip off in about, for those watching this live and listening or watching live, in about 25 minutes or so. So if you want to catch that, make sure you search Orange or Blue Bloods wherever you get your podcast to get that episode where I'll be talking about the results of the Knicks and Hawks Game 5. And that's going to do it, man. I want to thank you guys. I'll be back Friday, 8 a.m. with a new episode of 40 Days of Counting. Again, Orange and Blue Bloods will have a new episode in the morning, recapping the Knicks-Hawks Game 5. Be sure to follow me on X, EJ_Stewart. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok, ActionEJ. Thank you guys so much. This was a ton of fun. I'm EJ Stewart. Oh, I'm also on The Fan. I'm on The Fan Saturday and Sunday, midnight to 5 a.m. So make sure you check me out on WFAN New York. This is EJ. Take it easy, guys. I'll see you on Friday.